Okay, welcome in. I'm now going to review all of Tuesday's games of the NHL. So I'll say who I predicted to win, who actually won, and I'll go over the goal scoring, if that makes any sense. So the Canucks and Philip Flyers took to the ice in Philly. I did think that the Canucks would have that momentum after getting the two big wins to start the season. They'd be able to bring that momentum into Philadelphia. Unfortunately, it was not meant to be. The final score from Philly, 2-0. Obviously, there were only two goals in the game, and they both occurred in the first period. Igor Zamulov got things kicked off in the first minute and 45 seconds into the game, actually, assisted by Thomas Konechny and Scott Laughton. And it was an even strength goal. And with just under 3 minutes to go, Sean Couturier would get an even strength goal, and that obviously would propel the Flyers to victory. So they would improve to 2-1-0 on the season, and the Canucks are also sitting at 2-1-0. Our next matchup takes place in Quebec. Between the Minnesota Wild and the Montreal Canadiens. I did predict that the Minnesota would get the victory, and they sure did. A massive 5-2 victory. And one thing I will take away from this contest is I knew the Canadiens' power play would not be that great and they would struggle, but I did not think that they would give up two shorthanded goals on the same penalty or on the same power play. Typically, when you have a power play, you have an extra skater on the ice, which would help you score a goal, not give up two, but it was not meant to be. So in the first, Brandon Duhaime, as I mentioned, he would get the shorthanded goal less than 10 minutes into the frame, assisted by Jake Middleton. That would make it 1-0. And then 25 seconds later, Connor Dewar would get a second goal for the Wild. So 2-0 for the Wild after one. Joel Eriksson Ek would get a power goal just over 2 minutes into the second frame, assisted by Zuccarello and Kaprizov to make it 3-0. Tanner Pearson, I do apologize, would score just under 10 minutes into the game. No assists on that play, so it was 3-1 at that point. Kirill Kaprizov would score with less than 3 minutes to go in the second frame, and it was a power play goal as well, assisted by Matt Zuccarello and Casey Addison, I do believe. So it was 4-1 for the Wild heading into the third and final frame. And Joel Eriksson Ek would increase that lead just over 5 minutes into the third, 5-1, assisted by Kaprizov and Zuccarello. Alex Newhook would score for the Montreal Canadiens to decrease the lead 5-2, but it was too little, too late at that point. It was an even strength goal from David Savard and Cole Caulfield. So 5-2 is the final. Montreal is now sitting at 1-1-1 on the year, while the Wild are sitting at 2-1-0. Our next matchup takes place in Buffalo. Where the Sabres would play host to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And for the third straight game, I did predict that the Sabres would win, and they finally got off the schneid. It took until overtime to decide a winner in this contest, but they finally got their first win of the season. So Zemgus Girgensons would kick things off with just 9 minutes into the frame, an even strength goal from Yost and Samuelson. Jeff Skinner would increase the lead with just under 5 minutes to go in the first, an even strength goal from Owen Power and Alex Tuch. So it was 2-0 for the Sabres heading into the second frame. Brandon Hagel would get the lone goal in the second period with just about over 2 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Cirelli and Ginot. So it was 2-1 for the Sabres heading into the third and final frame, where Brandon Hagel would get another goal. Came up with 7 seconds to go in the frame, so the Sabres almost squeaked this one out in regulation. But Hagel would propel the Lightning to get the second goal of the game, tie it up, assisted by Braden Point. just about 2 minutes into overtime, Dylan Cousins, I should say, would get an even strength goal in overtime, assisted by Greenway and Rasmus Dahlin. So, therefore, the Sabres finally got their first win of the season. They are now sitting at 1-2-0, while the Tampa Bay Lightning are sitting at 1-3-0 to start this season. Our next matchup takes place in Long Island. Where the Arizona Coyotes went into New York to take on the Islanders. A very, very low scoring affair. 1-0 was the final from New York. I did predict that the Islanders would get the victory in this one. The lone goal came in the second period, where Matthew Barzal would get a power play goal, assisted by Dobson and Kyle Palmieri. So the Islanders are now 2-0-0 on the season, and the Arizona Coyotes are 1-2-0. Our next matchup takes place in Tennessee. Between the Edmonton Oilers and the Nashville Predators. Before I get onto the game, I'll just say two quick notes. I think I made a pretty wild prediction. I thought that because the Oilers were struggling getting out of the gate, that they wouldn't be able to get that momentum going. But I was proven wrong, to say the least. They got a massive win over the Predators. The big storyline heading into this matchup, last year we had a trade between two defensemen with Matthias Ekholm and Tyson Barrie. Obviously, Barrie was with the Oilers, Ekholm was with the Predators. They flipped, and this is the first time that these two teams have played since that trade. So obviously the Predators had a warm welcome for Matthias Ekholm, to say the least. So Draisaitl would get a power play goal in the first period to kick things off, assisted by Hyman and Nugent Hopkins. Zach Hyman would get on the score sheet as well, with just under 7 minutes to go, assisted by Bouchard and Draisaitl. Nugent Hopkins would make things 3-0 with just about 3 minutes to go in the frame. An even strength goal from Vogel and Hyman, and McDavid would score about a minute after that, an even strength goal from Draisaitl and Kane. So it was 4-0 for the Oilers heading into the second period. Tommy Novak would get the Predators on the board to stop the bleeding. A power play goal just over 2 minutes into the second frame, assisted by Ryan O'Reilly. That was very short-lived, as just over 5 minutes later, Leon Draisaitl would get a power play goal, assisted by Evan Bouchard and Connor McDavid. And Warren Foegele would score with less than 5 minutes to go in the frame to make it 6-1, assisted by Nugent Hopkins and Zach Hyman. So it was 6-1 heading into the third frame, and there was no goals in the third period. So 6-1 was the final from Nashville. The Oilers got their first win of the season. They are sitting at 1-2-0, while Nashville is sitting at 1-3-0 on the year. Our next matchup takes place in Manitoba. Where the Los Angeles Kings went into Winnipeg to take on the Jets. I did think that the Jets would be able to get the victory in this one. It was not meant to be. 5-1 was the final score. So it was a pretty nice coming back for the Pierre-Luc Dubois, obviously a former Winnipeg Jet. Speaking of that man, he would actually get the first goal of the game, 11 minutes into the frame, an even strength goal from Kopitar and Fiala. Trevor Moore would increase the lead to 2-0. Just about 5 minutes after that goal, assisted by Danault and Kalikev. So it was 2-0 for the Kings heading into the second period. Arthur Kalikev would give the Kings a 3-0 lead, assisted by Trevor Moore and Philip Danault. And Trevor Moore would get his second goal of the game with just about 5.5 minutes to go, assisted by Miles Anderson, if I'm not mistaken. And then Philip Danault would increase the lead to 5-0 on a power play goal, no assists. Mark Scheifele would finally get the Winnipeg Jets on the board, an even strength goal with just about 1:15 to go, assisted by DeMello and Namistenkov. So 5-1 was the final from Winnipeg. The Jets are sitting at 1-2-0 on the season, while the Kings finally got their first win of the year. They have 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 overtime/shootout loss thus far. The next matchup takes place in Seattle, where the Colorado Avalanche went into Seattle to take on the Kraken. I did predict that Colorado would get the victory, and it was kind of like a revenge game, as I mentioned in my preview video just the other day. Obviously, the Kraken knocked off the Avalanche in the postseason last year, so I'm sure they had a bit of a chip on their shoulder coming into this grudge match. So in the first period, Kyler Yamamoto, one of the newer acquisitions for the Kraken, would get an even strength goal for the Seattle team, assisted by Vince Dunn on an even strength goal, just about 5 minutes to go into the frame. So it was 1-0 for the Kraken heading into the second period. Terry Lehkonen would tie things up just about 4 minutes into the frame. No assists on the play, so it was tied at 1. Logan O'Connor would score with about 12 minutes into the frame, assisted by Makar and Devin, not Jonathan Toews. They are siblings. That was a shorthanded goal, and that made it a 2-1 lead for the Seattle Kraken. In the third period, Mikko Rantanen would get an even strength goal from Sam Girard and Alex Cogliano, and Valery Nichushkin, no assists on his goal, would increase the lead to 4-1 for the Colorado Avalanche, and that would be where the game would sit. So 4-1 was the final from Seattle. So the Avalanche, still undefeated on the season. They are sitting at 3-0-0. While the Seattle Kraken are still looking for their first win of the year. They have 0 wins, 3 losses, and 1 overtime/shootout loss. Our next matchup takes place in California, where we would have the Carolina Hurricanes taking on the San Jose Sharks. I did predict that the Carolina Hurricanes would get the victory, and they got a pretty big win, to say the least. In the first period, Fabian Zetterlund would get an even strength goal about 3 minutes into the frame, assisted by Thomas Hertl to give the Sharks a 1-0 lead. And less than a minute later, Seth Jarvis would get a power play goal, assisted by Bunting and Teravainen. It was 1-1 after the first frame. In the second period, Jacob Slavin would give the Carolina Hurricanes a 2-1 lead, and that would actually come on a shorthanded goal. And it's not so much that scarce for a team to get a shorthanded goal, but to give up to a defenseman that doesn't look good for your power play units. Philippe Zadina, one of the big acquisitions for the Sharks, would tie things up on a power play goal of his own, on the same power play, I should say, assisted by Zetterlund, so it was 2-2 at that point. William Eklund would give the Sharks a 3-2 lead on yet another power play goal, assisted by Thurn and Thomas Hertl. So it's 3-2 for the Sharks heading into the third and final frame, where the Hurricanes just took over. Stefan Noesen would tie things up just about 9 minutes into the frame on a power play goal from Kotkaniemi and Brandon Shea. Seth Jarvis would give the Hurricanes a 4-3 lead on a power play goal as well, assisted by Nishis and Brett Burns. Martin Nishis would get on the board himself on an even strength goal with about 5 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Bunting and Shea. That would increase the lead to 5-3. And Brett Pesce, with just about 15 seconds after that, would give the Hurricanes a 6-3 lead, assisted by Kotkaniemi and Noesen. So the Hurricanes get a 6-3 win over the Sharks. And the Hurricanes have now improved to 3-1-0 on the season, while the Sharks have fallen to 0-2-1 thus far. The last matchup of the night took place in Nevada, where the Dallas Stars took on the Vegas Golden Knights. I did predict that Vegas would get the victory in this one, and they did, narrowly getting it. It took it to a shootout to decide a winner. So Craig Smith would kick things off in the first for the Stars. An even strength goal from Tyler Seguin and Harley. Caden Korzek would tie things up for the Vegas Golden Knights, assisted by Howden and William Karlsson. So it was 1-1 heading into the second period, where there was no goals in the second period. It took until the third to get any more goals. Joe Pavelski would score just about 3 minutes into the frame, an even strength goal from Hintz, and then William Karlsson would tie things up with just about 3 minutes to go in the frame, an even strength goal from Korzek and Mark Stone. So there were no goals in overtime. It took into a shootout to decide a winner, where Jonathan Marchessault, the reigning Conn Smythe player, MVP, whatever you want to call it, would get the shootout winner for the Vegas Golden Knights, who are still undefeated on the season. They are now sitting at 4-0-0, while the Sharks have dropped to 500. They are sitting at 1-1-0. As always, if you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button if you're new to the channel. And before I say what I normally say, so in my predictions for this one, I went 5-4. So far in the season, I am now 29-19. So I'm still above 500. So I'm really not going to complain. As always, take care.